Welcome to TOSB Conversation Starters. We mark Pride Month today with author, podcaster, and global C suite facilitator Anshu Arora. Anshu is known for her popular TEDx talk, Redefining Leadership Gravitas, which brings together her years of leadership coaching experience. For a more formal introduction, as a global facilitator working with partners across the world, Anshu facilitates DEI sensitivity with a focus on cultural inclusiveness, communications and expression, identity sensitization, and more. You can also catch her on her podcast, Candid Conversations with Anshu Arora, which covers real people with real stories and was nominated for the Best Podcast on Self Help and Resilience by HT Podmasters. Welcome to TOSB Conversation Starters, Anshu.
Thank you, Shreya. Such a pleasure to be on this platform, and I'm absolutely delighted and enjoying this partnership with TOSB. Thank you again.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, Anshu, diving straight into the topic, which is that about psychological safety. So, you've been making a lot of conversations around psychological safety at work, and it's a very intangible thing. So, please explain to us, how does it feel to be psychologically safe at work?
So, when we talk about psychological safety, Shreya, the very first thing is what is it? Because even today, when I run workshops around it or talks around it, there's always one or two there are a couple of people in the crowd who say, "Excuse me, can you just explain this one more time to get absolute clarity about what this is?" So, psychological safety essentially is when an individual in an organization feels safe to express himself or herself, and they feel no threat, no repercussions of making an honest or sharing an honest feedback or any input, any experience that they're going through. When an organization can facilitate that kind of psychological safety for an individual, so it's needless to say how people can genuinely thrive in that environment and bring themselves to their optimum best.
Absolutely. And also, in your talks, you speak about something called invisible insecurities, which you've mentioned that, how people who actually feel safe can get threatened or impacted by these invisible insecurities. So, would you elaborate on that also?
So Shreya, let me share a live example, an anecdote from what happened very recently. So, as you know, I do a lot of executive coaching and I'm also a speaker coach by profession. So, I was coaching a senior leader, and there's something very peculiar, Shreya, about this person. And he would always have like a straight face. And in that one-to-one feedback session, I just very softly and with a lot of articulation and thinking over, told him, why don't you smile some more? It'll make you more approachable for the people who are talking to you, especially because you're a leader. You're leading, you're a people manager, you're leading so many functions in your organization. Shreya, you'll be amazed to know what he told me. He said that I have a gap between my teeth, and once I just smiled, and somebody came up to me and says, "Hey, that looks kind of odd." And ever since, that gentleman went in his little shell and refrained from smiling. And when I got to know him, he was such a fun person. So I just want to take this little example, which may sound absolutely not too huge for anyone to listen to. But imagine that people at such levels as well can live with insecurities that they never speak about, insecurities that are hidden, therefore, and how it can refrain them. It can stop them from not only being expressive, but even impact what they do. And I'm talking about a very small physical attribute. Think about the baggages people carry today. Think about the emotional blockages people may have, or the kind of problems that people face today, which they dare not speak about. So the moment we facilitate a psychologically safe environment, we are allowing that person to open up, to be comfortable, and to be able to come out of it. I just want to tell you, he smiles now.
Lovely. So you made a huge difference in somebody's life by acknowledging that.
I think the only thing that mattered, Shreya, was that he felt a little comfortable to open up to me and tell me what was his botheration.
Yeah. Anshu, in your famous TED talk, you outlined the key tenets of being a leader with gravitas. How does mental health and employee well-being fit into this? What role do leaders play in building psychological safety at work?
Thank you for bringing up the TED Talk because I was itching to talk about the leadership role in this whole gamut of psychological safety. So, my TED Talk, which is about redefining the leadership gravitas, and also the book that I have authored called Candid Conversations, where I have interviewed an LGBT activist. In fact, he was the first one to start pride parades in India way back 25 years in the south of India. And so I've put my experience of leadership coaching as well as my interaction with this person, and I've put that together in that TED talk. So what I'm mostly talking about is, where will this change come from? Let me share a quick example again, Shreya. So when this gentleman that I've interviewed, uh, he they were struggling to find some more solutions, and they wrote to the leading authorities saying that as gay activists and as people who we are working with, we need some support, and they wrote to the leading authorities in that area. Shreya, be ready to hear what I'm going to tell you, because you know what they received at the end of all of this back and forth emails and the request for solutioning? They got a big carton of condoms. And they said, we need counselors. I need a counselor to come to my house, to other people's houses who are fighting with their identity. Please come to our houses, send a counselor and counsel our families so we could be accepted. They sought support from authorities. Similarly, I want to connect that to leadership now and just understand, Shreya, that where does the onus of this change lie? Who is the custodian of culture in an organization? Who is the custodian of a value system in an organization? And where does change actually move in from? It all moves from the top. Imagine if somebody in that authority would have sat down and said, no, it's not a random request. Hold that cotton. We don't need to send that. This person is asking for something else. Understand the need. And similarly, in organizations, it's very important for the leaders to drive it. So there's something that we often address in this context, Shreya, and I think that should summarize this question. It says that it is a responsibility of the leaders to invite the quiet voice in. So that's where this whole initiative will find its right shape.
I absolutely agree with you, Anshu, on the fact that, all changes, all, such narratives are actually driven from the top. But sometimes, it's not the intent that is missing. It's basically people don't know, or leaders don't know how to go about it. What is the right response? Because they are also navigating this new space. So I want to understand how you work with these leaders to help them create these psychologically secure workplaces.
Yes, Shreya, since I work very closely with the C-suite in the strategic space, in the coaching space, and especially in progressive coaching. So what happens, Shreya, is I think if I go back to some statistics here, McKinsey's report of, I think, 2021, and I'm sure there's been a lot of positive advancement and betterment to this, but that report said that only 26% leaders have been able to create a psychologically safe environment. So just imagine the amount of work that remains pending. So whenever I am in a tete-a-tete with the leaders, there's one thing I very strongly emphasize on, which is the empathy triangle, Shreya. So where one aspect of the empathy triangle says, I have emotional empathy, which means I feel your pain. There's another tip of the triangle which says cognitive empathy, where it talks about I understand, I've gone through what you're going through and I understand. None of these spots are for the leaders, by the way. The leader's spot is the third tip of the triangle, which is about empathetic concern, where we turn around and say, I must act to lessen this pain. So you feel empathetic to act about it. And I think that is where design of policies, design of the culture sensitization, design of initiatives like you're doing now, Shreya, through TSP, all these initiatives come into action. I was really happy to see the progress many corporates have made, but believe you me, we've not even covered the base completely. I still see whether it is gender sensitivity that still needs attention. We still have awkward moments. There is still microaggression where one doesn't think about the right kind of words. I would love to sit in a sales meeting where the language is clean and many such things. So working with the leaders towards the act part of it.
Great. And this takes me back to your point of invisible insecurities, because I know that there are programs designed for leadership, for different aspects of leadership, and this is one of them, which is great. But as an individual, I think our listeners would like to know that how do I address my physical insecurities? Is there a tip? Is there an advice for me as an individual to understand, acknowledge, and then work upon my insecurities?
I'm a big fan of anecdotes, and I'll answer this again with an anecdote, Shreya. So, Shreya, I've now have about 26 plus years of experience. When I started my career, I recently got married, and as per our culture, used to wear those red bangles in my hand. And I hit the presentation floor, and my boss, who was a lady, turned around and sent my immediate boss to me to say that please try and convince her she can't wear these bangles on the floor. Today we're talking about an inclusive world, so I'm trying to bring in that angle of how it exists in the tiniest of things, Shreya. So I did not change anything, Shreya. I said, if my intellect and what I'm doing is hampered by your view of what I'm wearing in my hand, and that too is something very cultural and traditional in nature, I want to pause and prove my point through my might. So my answer to that question that you raised, Shreya, is that step number one is that each individual has to believe in his, her, their truth first. Had I been convinced that I must take it off because, oh my God, my boss wants me to take it off and I don't get my space to be inclusive. And by the way, I'm talking about 26 years earlier, where we weren't even aware of this term called DE&I. And second aspect then would be to find allies, somebody who supports me. Right now, you, me, Jyotsna, we're all allies, supporting each other. So step two will be to find an ally. And step three would be to act, not step back, but act on your belief. And step four would be to yourself become an ally for someone else. I think that's the sheer cycle of how you can nail this. I've learned it the hard way, but I haven't given. I really didn't give up. And I think Whatever is your truth, you must live it with pride. Chin up, as they say.
Well, that's a fantastic cheat sheet to, look at every morning, because easier said than done. We all know these things, but when it comes to practicing it, we sometimes, we do not do it for ourselves. So thank you so much, Anshu, for sharing, these implementable little things that can bring change in our own life, and we can feel psychologically safe and secure at our workplace, and also drive such narratives within our organizations. So, this was TOSB Conversation Starters. If you would like to invite Anshu to your organization to hear more about psychological safety at work and invisible securities, write to our team. And this is your host, Shreya, signing off. Stay tuned for next conversation for the Pride Month. Thank you.